Hello, happy May, and welcome to the Look-See for May 15th, 2025. So spring has finally sprung here in West Michigan, and I did not have to travel much this month, but I had a lot of deadlines to meet, and I was rather challenged to get them all done. But wow, it certainly makes life interesting. Every month, when I take a look at what's happening and what is coming, I never know what I'm going to see. So I like to ask for a keyword for the month, and this helps me look at whatever I see from like a bit of a quirky point of view. And this month, the keyword was shoelace. I had to think about that a bit. But shoelaces are used to tie some type of footwear to your feet. And footwear is chosen based on what you're preparing to do. So sports shoes, like tennis shoes, etc., are for running, basketball, playing tennis, and things like that. Ballet shoes are for dance. Dress shoes are for attending like a wedding or a graduation. So you get the idea. And I think the message about shoelace might be to make sure you have the right shoes to make the journey into the future. Make sure you've tied on the right shoes. Maybe think about your stance toward the changing world. Where are you going? And are you ready to make the future of your choice unfold? So just remember, you don't wear football cleats to a wedding, and you don't wear ballet shoes to feed the cows or work in the garden. So with that, I'll say almost everything that came up this month formed a theme that was mostly concentrated on national and international situations. So with that, though, I thought it was mostly quiet this month, maybe a few bumps. So let's begin. Number one, I saw the Photoshop picture of President Trump dressed up like the Pope and instantly knew that the message was that Trump or those fighting the cabal of bad actors had succeeded in getting control of the Vatican Bank. Now, this was the bank from which much of the world was controlled. Pretty much all of the world was controlled. So things are changing. To be honest, I'm more interested in what's in the Vatican Library and in their secret storage vaults. But getting control of the Vatican Bank is a step in the right direction. Number two, the death of Pope Francis brought not only a Vatican financial crisis, but a gigantic crisis in the Catholic Church itself, in the hierarchies up at the top. It looked like the division between various church factions could not be bridged. The division was between those who wanted a pope or were thinking that they would have a pope who could get control of the Vatican Bank again, and those who wanted to just focus on supporting the spiritual side of people who were still interested in being Catholic. I thought the cardinals were open to debate about a good choice, but they also had the attitude that they didn't really have anyone in mind as good choice. So they ended up choosing Robert Francis Prevost, an American from Chicago. The choice is decent, but when I go ahead in time to see how well his papacy goes, it looks like the papacy is split. I saw two popes or two territories with a pope in each one. I thought they wanted one pope to secretly deal with those who have taken over the Vatican Bank, like somebody who could not only handle the money, but also the huge number of properties and buildings owned by the church. The second pope was to deal with the spiritual aspects of the church, which was falling apart, really falling apart, as the nature of religion shifts to a true spirituality. It looked like the Catholic territories were divided up, like one pope for the Americas and one for Eurasia, Africa, over that way. And maybe they'll just present one of them as the new pope, but the other will be there in the background, handling all of the financial dealings. Number 3, in surveying the media world at the moment, the most important voices of our time are Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Alex Jones. These brave men are taking the heat that would otherwise be felt by all of us. They are out in front, under fire, working to keep us from falling completely into the globalist trap of mindless slavery to a system in which we have no voice and those in control care nothing for us or our lives. Trump, Musk, Carlson, Rogan, and Jones are not fighting for democracy. They are fighting for our humanity. They are fighting to preserve a system that is falling apart because its time has come and gone. They know we would never be able to mount a newly organized, free system from a position of slavery within a globalist system. And thus their work is giving us a small window of time to wake up, evaluate, and come up with something that preserves the key rights that allow us to evolve into a more beautiful world. Those rights are freedom of thought and speech, freedom to bear arms and defend ourselves, freedom from political persecution, freedom from financial control, and I might add financial traps, freedom to believe what we wish, freedom from torture, freedom from propaganda disguised as truth, freedom from being forced to incriminate ourselves, freedom from being jailed without a fair trial, freedom to be judged by peers rather than kings, presidents, or politicians, freedom from political invasion of our homes and offices, and many other freedoms necessary for the ongoing evolution and maturation of each human into an aware, critical thinking being who's firm in ethics, values, morals, and rights. Trump symbolizes the right to be self-governing. Musk symbolizes the right to be free of financial control. Tucker Carlson symbolizes the right to have free speech. Joe Rogan symbolizes the right to have free speech, free thought, and to be free from propaganda. And Alex Jones symbolizes the right to have free speech and free thought, the right to bear arms, to be free from propaganda, and to be free from political persecution in our offices and homes. Number 4. I have seen several headlines in the last month or two saying, big changes are coming. And in my head, I say to the people who wrote those headlines, have you been living under a rock? Big changes have been rolling over us for the last 5 years. In spite of the pressure and the chaos, a lot of people are doing well, and they're holding a space of love and common sense. Although some people are not really paying attention, not aware, not managing themselves well, there are enough people now holding the awakened space to make a real difference. We keep driving toward a world that works, a world characterized by common sense and caring. And I hope it'll have a little pizzazz in it. Number 5. I saw big waves hitting the west coast of America, the east coast of Japan, and the south coast of Alaska. I didn't see an earthquake, though. I assumed that that was the cause of the waves. There was some damage, but it wasn't catastrophic. And it looked to be happening in like mid-September or midsummer to late summer. Not sure what that was about. Just could be waves of emotion, but I didn't think so. I thought it was water. Number 6. China came up, and with it came a slightly different view of them, of the people and the nation of China. So one thing I saw when the little men in brown robes were visiting me long ago was this slow-moving but steadily increasing rolling revolution in China. The people there had had enough of whatever China was doing. Over the past years, I've watched to see if there were any signs of discontent or difficulty serious enough to cause a revolution, but China just kept moving forward, increasing in power and influence. So for a long time, I thought the robes must be wrong on the topic of China. But this month, I saw a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. And since there's so much narrative swirling around us about China, I think it would be good to hold a perspective that goes a little beyond the narrative being put out there by certain people. So I'll start by saying something I've mentioned briefly in the past. And it's been many, many years now, but one of the financial newsletters I was getting back in time published a critical report on China. It reported that China had put together a plan to destroy the U.S. It was a 10-year plan to engage in a very quiet economic war. The plan specified that they would slowly take over one aspect of manufacturing each year for 10 years, after which they estimated that the U.S. would be weakened to the point of being impotent. They wanted to take over like manufacturing steel one year, computer chips the next year, underwear and clothing the next year, until, they completely dominated the manufacturing world. The goal was to completely unseat the U.S. by inviting manufacturing to come to China and take advantage of the cheap labor there. Lots of companies did that, and China became a manufacturing dynamo and an exporting powerhouse. They also began eyeing certain properties as sites to buy in the U.S. because U.S. laws allowed foreign companies to buy American land, and the reporting of foreign ownership was seldom examined or enforced. So the Chinese worked their plan diligently, and for a while, it looked like it was succeeding beautifully. However, I see several serious cracks in the plan. First, when China began coaxing manufacturers to come and locate your company in China, they did so with the full support of a cabal of globalists who were unfolding their plan to create a one-world government. The globalist plan was to create a system of trade in which no company could become independent or self-sufficient, and no country would be big enough or powerful enough to challenge the globalist power system. Challengers would suddenly find their food, water, money, or manufacturing supplies were cut off, forcing them back into compliance with globalist rules and wishes. Many countries were under globalist control. Kings, presidents, and leaders who resisted them were simply taken out. The globalists were planning to use China to take down the US by cutting America off at the economic knees. And once the US was subservient to China, the globalists were going to turn on China, get full control of the Chinese government, and reign supreme. Now, China is no dummy. They've been around for a long time. And from their point of view, they were going to use the globalist encouragement and support to build themselves up and then simply take out the globalists. So the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Along came Donald Trump. His motto, "Let's make America great again," was really a battle cry. A battle cry to stand up and fight the globalists. It was an invitation to people around the globe to open their eyes and see what was happening, and to open their mouths and say no to the great corruption of life that was spreading everywhere. Trump recognized that the American taxpayer was being gutted, working hard, sending money everywhere, supposedly to help make a better world. But most of the money was being twisted into engineered social divisions and stabs in our back. Trump imposed tariffs and said no taxes for people making less than $200,000 a year. He began getting rid of excess baggage in the government, intending to shrink it to a minimum and return many decisions and much power to the various states. He let the COVID vaccine do its part in teaching people that someone was at war against us. And although there were no guns, bullets, or bombs, we were being attacked and needed to begin defending ourselves. To do that, we needed to wake up, and wake up even further and further. Trump was blunt, even harshly so, shocking people out of their slumber and privately celebrating the complaints, because it meant that people everywhere were waking up to the truth that we were being taken down in numerous insidious ways. So going back to the cracks that I saw China falling into, they became a manufacturing powerhouse just in time to have the globalist plot come down. Just in time for Trump to come along, impose tariffs, and say, we're going to change the money system. Now, whenever there's a sudden change of money systems, there's always some chaos. People freak out. They become uncertain. They stop buying and they start watching intently, using their money only when they absolutely need something. But China, now the exporting giant, needs people to buy what they are making. If money changes, tariffs remain in place, the rules change, and people wake up, the U.S. economy will falter, and people will stop buying. China will be in a place they didn't expect and cannot get out of quickly. They can turn to the countries of the global south. That's all the countries below the equator. But those countries are not quite wealthy enough to make up for the money and orders that were coming from the U.S. So if that occurs, Chinese manufacturing will slow down drastically. People there, Chinese people, will be laid off. If you lose your job in China, your income instantly goes to zero. Millions of Chinese have left the countryside and the more self-sufficient lifestyles they once had. They moved into big cities over the past 50 years because that is where jobs and good money could be had. So they have done the same thing Americans did in the early 1900s, left the land and trapped themselves in a city. The problem with this is that those who move into a city end up trading security, self-sufficiency, simplicity, and sensible options for a paycheck. Everything becomes a service that you must pay for and that you have no control over. Water is delivered to you. Food is delivered to you. If the services stop delivering, life itself is threatened. Other problems also arise. The body must cope with severe pollution. Those in a city are cut off from nature. Clothes, cars, small tools, and equipment all come in from the outside. Sophisticated communication tools and computers become a technological necessity. Entertainment is delivered, and no one entertains themselves anymore. Large groups of people, however, attract charlatans and crooks. And now safety needs change, trust falters, and weapons begin to proliferate. Today, the globalist cabal is struggling badly, and some say they're no longer in power. Because China formulated its 10-year plan in the days when the globalist minions were in control, China is facing the reality that they spent decades preparing for a world that is not going to be. Is China going to have a revolution? Will 30 years of careful planning for life in a global economy with themselves at the top have to be discarded? Their housing market has been going down for 4 years now, and people who bought homes before they were built are angry. They're paying for something they still don't have. Lowering interest rates and offering cheap loans to people without an income makes no sense. So that will not save them. If American people quit buying because we are going through parallel stresses over here, that will kick the leg out from under a leg, not all the legs, a leg out from under the Chinese economy and make things worse. Offering stimulus packages will just increase their debt without building productivity or creating real solutions. So they might laugh at our tariffs, but they are facing a world of hurt. And if they go down, we will all suffer. The Robe said the globalist cabal of businesses trying to get control of the world would be finished if everyone just stayed home and spent absolutely no money for several days. You know, money is the source of the globalist power, and refusing to spend would certainly put a kink in their financial power, possibly even bringing it to an end. Financially, emotionally, and physically, the cabal could not afford such a hit. The unexpected benefit in this scenario was that we would suddenly see where our power sits. It's right in our own hands. The power to buy or not buy. As we move forward into the future, if the money system falls or changes drastically and nothing is working for a brief time, maybe we should all see it as the perfect chance to put the final nails in the coffin of the cabal. So I'm going to close on China by saying China is not our enemy. Our enemies are ignorance, lack of vision, and manipulative narratives. Number 7. We are getting very close to the new money system now. It will all be digital. It may be coming in the period of July, August, September. This new money looks like it could turn into the nails in our coffin, but not right away. We could ignore that new money and refuse to accept it, but that creates a lot of chaos for everybody. So the questions you have to ask yourself are, how strong am I to resist this new money? How much courage do I have to stand for what I want? How long can I make life work without a reasonable source of income? And how patient can I afford to be if we have to work our way through one or two iterations of new money until we get it right? These are tough questions, but we need to think about them in case we have a worst case scenario. One of the big hooks that will be used to coax us into a digital money system is that, oh, this will make it so much easier for government to identify and end the serious corruption of some politicians and government departments. From that perspective, yeah, CBDCs, digital money, that would be nice. However, a system that allows a government to prevent corruption is a system that can also prevent anyone from doing what they need or want to do. We could insist on certain laws, rules, and regulations that will provide legal protections, but history shows that laws, rules, and regulations are no better than promises. Promises are useless. Prevention is key. Some other group getting into power 10 years from now might not care one whit for old promises, rules, or laws. So my advice, have a little bit of gold, some silver, some cash, and enough food stored away so you can take a stand if you need to. Number 8. I've had a number of requests for some insight into Canada's future. And although anything could change and probably will change, maybe even a dozen times over the next 5 years, I'll share. Some people wrote to me and were upset that I said Canada would be part of the US. Their attitude was, hell no. But I have to say what I see. So I'll share what I see regarding Canada, but only if you agree to stay open and flexible and not end up collapsing in fear or anger. Don't be clinging to the past or claiming that it will never happen. So, with that said, it looks like Canada will break up. And this will begin before the US starts breaking up, although we won't be far behind. In fact, the whole breakup looks almost simultaneous. So as I watched this breaking up, I thought I should amend what I said earlier just a little bit. So it would be a little more accurate to say that Canada is breaking up and the US is breaking up, and eventually the various regions that take shape in this breaking up form a new kind of union. So it's not like Canada's being subsumed or eaten by the US. It's not like that at all. So some people wrote and were upset that Mark Carney was elected prime minister, but he's only in that position because he, Trump, Bukele, and Sheinbaum are negotiating the coming together of the North American Union. That union won't be announced or operational for a while, but the framework for how it will operate will be laid out in advance. So having said that, it looks like Canada breaks in the middle, and then the East, and then the West End pull out. Ontario and Manitoba, They were sort of left hanging there by themselves. And it looked like a small slice of Western Manitoba might join the province to their immediate west. So, as I said in my earlier look-see, most of the paperwork that would be needed to bring together the United States of North America has already been done and continues to be refined. Most of the finances have already been set up to be transferred. Most of the various treaties with different Indian tribes have already been reviewed and transferred to the new union. And most of the constitutional blending and like coordination of laws and policies have already been set forth as things that the people of the various countries or new regions will be given a chance to have a voice in. The things that remain to be done are to continue to push the countries to the breaking point so that nationalistic fervor falls to the background. Can I say that again? The things that remain to be done, this is not me speaking, this is what I'm seeing the people putting this in place are doing. The thing that remains to be done, things that remain to be done, are to continue to push the countries to the breaking point so that nationalistic fervor falls to the background. Then there is the need for people to bend and flow with the breaks, to see how that plays out, as well as how and where the new regional areas form. A lot of people in Canada are disappointed in the kind of governance system they've had for many years, and they do want something different because there has been a maturing process in the human and a bit of evolution and expansion of consciousness. People are ready for change, and they're ready to engage in shaping something that's more in line with their evolution and their consciousness. So the important thing here is to not be afraid of change, and don't pull away right when your eyeballs and voice are the most important. The chance to have an impact is when everything is in motion. If you let others make all the decisions, you can't complain once it's all said, done, and set up. Number 9. Trump is busy shrinking the U.S. government. That was something I saw when with the robes. And it shrunk a lot, let me tell you. Wow. In a country where everybody has grown up expecting the government to handle everything, to be responsible for everything, to fix everything, this shrinkage is going to create some chaos and disillusionment. And my attitude is good. We need to grow up, to take responsibility and fix the problems that lack of attention creates. Good government is about making the rules we want to live by, and we cannot ignore that. We have to be engaged, or we're going to end up feeling and acting like prisoners caught in someone else's rules. From another perspective, think about the government as if it were your body. When you gain too much weight, there's too much mass, too many cells, too much territory for the immune system to police and take care of well. Things break down. The immune system just cannot keep up with the work, and rogue cells take over. Now, think of the shrinking of government as being like somebody who's decided to lose weight. When a system gets too big, there's too many places for corruption to hide and too many places for things to go wrong. And they do go wrong. So like going on a diet, shrinking the government creates a bit of uproar in your life. But that is a necessary first step. If we want to survive, we have to give ourselves a chance to get healthy again. Lifestyle changes are required. Different food, different work, new clothing that fits. When you go on a diet, you need a new wardrobe. Exercise, new habits, all kinds of things. So for all of us in the West, in China, Russia, Southeast Asia, Africa, Australia, and all the countries in the global South, we simply must be willing to feel our way along a path that allows us to change and evolve. And it might be slow, and there might be some uproar, but it doesn't need to become violent. Everyone needs to pay attention. Everyone needs to speak up. Everyone needs to act appropriately as the world around us reorganizes into a whole new set of relationships. We are still 200 to 300 years away from coming together as a planetary civilization. And that will be without the New World Order or the corruption, the corrupt power system. But be aware that we are slowly moving in that direction. So adopt the long view, quit worrying, and get out of the ruts. Number 10. While we are on the topic of countries breaking up, many years ago, I went through a period of time in which I came face to face with the possibility that the U.S. might not be there for me someday. It was a shocking possibility that knocked the wind right out of me. I felt like I was falling through space with nothing around me, no one to catch me, and nowhere to land. I cried and cried. In the middle of all those tears, I realized that the U.S. was mostly an idea, a commitment to a way of life. It was a hunk of land with familiar rivers, lakes, trees, and weather patterns. It was a calendar full of familiar holidays. It was a place full of people I loved, a place I always thought would be there to protect me. It was a place that was invincible. So when I tried to envision those same things in another location, then in another country, then in another continent, and then even another planet, my perception of the U.S. changed. I realized that it was mostly an idea and a commitment to a way of viewing life, and I began to wonder who else in the world might have that same kind of dependence on their country or their perception of their country. And over the years, I have found that lots of people have that attitude toward their country. It doesn't matter whether the country is a jungle, a desert, or a mountain. Even more importantly, I found a deep appreciation growing in myself for the way that the various groups of people set up life to survive and thrive. There are amazing cultures everywhere, and people develop phenomenal skills and capacities that allow them to navigate their territory very successfully. I've never lost this appreciation for the vast differences between and among the countries that have carved out a little spot on the planet to live, love, raise their children, grow their gardens and themselves. The nations are truly special, and we do not need to be homogenized into one big, boring mass of humanity in order to get along and advance in consciousness. Exactly the opposite is needed. We need a natural simplicity and a deep appreciation and gratitude for the great range of unique cultural ways and useful skills that our various people have developed. We need a mindset that celebrates all of it, and I hope you will. Number 11. What is the difference between the Israeli government and the people who live in Israel? A year ago, I would have said, well, it's the same difference between the U.S. government and the people who live in the U.S. I would have said, well, the people are not the government, nor do they have the government they want. But this year, I would say that the people of the U.S. are a much more attentive and vocal part of their government now. They have come together to elect someone who appears to be actually working for the people. I'm not sure that is the case in Israel. The people there have not been able to put someone they want in power, someone besides Netanyahu. So whether we talk about Israel, the U.S., or the rest of the world, the point here is that none of us are out of danger yet. People do not have the governments they want. However, there is a bit of light at the end of the U.S. tunnel as we continue to see changes that limit invasion by immigration, efforts to eliminate financial fraud, protection from gain-of-function research, rebuilding of a functional military, balancing of at least some international relationships, some attention to the education system, and efforts to bring back a bit of self-sufficiency to America by inviting manufacturing back to our country. So back to Israel. I've never been to Israel, so I may not be qualified to make any predictions, but I am qualified to have my own opinion based on a rather distant perspective, some reading, and a little bit of intuitive information. And the view from where I stand is that it looks like the Israeli people are in serious danger of their country disintegrating, as in destroyed. They have been hobbled by fiercely biased religious traditions, the same kind of propaganda we've had over here. An attitude that holds a touch of superiority and arrogance, and a history of being pushed to stand out instead of fit in. Earlier this year, I saw people leaving Israel, moving to other countries, and not saying where they were from, as if to hide who they were or what and where they had been. In noting that change when I first saw it, I didn't say much about it. But it came up again this month, and I realized that something special is going on. What is the universe trying to show us here? This may be the first efforts of some Jews to rise above the propaganda that keeps encouraging them to see themselves as separate, as victims, as outcasts. It's the first time I've seen signs that they are willing to fit in with others. This will bring on an identity crisis, the kind of identity crisis that one experiences in the process of maturation. When someone suddenly releases illusions, stops allowing manipulation, and begins to do the best he or she can with the reality at hand. It looks like quite a few Jews are going to recognize that they have been intensely targeted for the kind of artificial division that has been used so successfully to create racial, economic, and national tensions everywhere. Number 12. Netanyahu came up, and as I mentioned last month, I saw President Trump stepping back from Netanyahu at a critical moment, and it looks like that is continuing. It looks like Trump has decided that he is not going to worry about Israeli fears of Iran becoming a nuclear power. Instead of allowing the whole nuclear power issue to become the excuse to fight and attack one another, it looks like Trump is going to set up a working relationship with Iran, leaving Israel to hop up and down in the background in frustration and worry. If Israel does something stupid and gets clobbered, it will be their own fault. Then, if they need help and support, Trump will agree to help, but only if they get rid of Netanyahu. And he will justify this demand by saying Netanyahu was the guy who caused all the trouble. We'll see what happens. Number 13. In tuning into Zelensky, I was surprised to see that he appeared to have suddenly realized that he has no future. What was a puppet role in a large theater has become a life and death reality for him. He was beginning to think he should take matters into his own hands and do what he thinks is best. Wow. His feeling was that if he wants to survive, he has to act from a place of truth inside himself and demonstrate something of power and value. He wanted to show the world that he is capable, he is serious, that he means business, and that he can make a respectable difference. However, it appeared to be too late for him to try changing his image, and it's likely he will be taken out or at least removed very soon. But the realization of how precarious his position is, and that decision to try to act from his own power, that's very good for his soul. Number 14. I noted that Trump announced a 30 to 80% reduction in drug prices, and I was really happy to see that, even though I don't take any drugs. But the questions that came up around this announcement were, and one thing led to another here. So the questions were, what will that do to the pharmaceuticals and their thirst for power and money? They're not going to like that. What will the pharmaceutical companies do to Trump for cutting their profits? What about reviewing the drug schedule for other drugs like recreational drugs? If recreational drugs were suddenly made legal, that would mean the people in prison on drug charges for those recreational drugs should be set free, wouldn't it? If all of those people in prison are set free, would that be like dealing with prisoners from other countries who became illegal immigrants to America? Would we handle that well? Or would we insist that those people stay in jail? What if you knew that the drug laws were set up to capture people for the private prisons and trap them, and that those prisons then signed contracts with the government to use prison labor to produce various goods without having to pay a fair wage to their prisoners? The ramifications of Trump's moves have far-reaching potentials and effects. What is true justice, and how do we achieve it? Number 15. I'll close with a few miscellaneous comments. First, I still see the possibility that assassinations of top-level people will occur. So please envision a space of love around the leaders we have. They aren't perfect, but we need them, unless you're ready to step in and do their job. So, number 16, I'm still watching Trump like a hawk because so much of what he does could be taken several ways. Is he a hardworking president trying to restore the U.S.? Is he a traitor doing everything we want him to do while setting up a trap that captures all of us? Or is he someone walking a very fine line, trying to avoid triggering the cabal, while secretly moving things into place to eviscerate them? We will have to see how things unfold, but be ready to act appropriately if and when needed. Number 17. I keep watching for signs the government will announce the presence of ETs and that we have been working with them for a while, but nothing. Zilch, no announcements. However, I wondered if the story NASA put out about Voyager 1 having transmitted a very strange but coherent stream of information that became a humanoid face, was that the start of something real or the first step in a whole new and fabricated approach to the ET question? The stories about scientists and astronomers being disturbed and having hallucinations after looking at that image, or that the computer erased all evidence of the message and the face, all that is just so very convenient and so very unlike the communications of real ET people. The timing, the story, the planting of the idea that something out there has detected us, seen us, and has now infected us is suspiciously like the propaganda and movie scripts of the past designed to frighten or at least make people worry about ETs. Everyone loves drama, including ETs, and the bad ETs are experts at using real-life drama, otherwise known as a narrative, to engage people while completely distracting them from the truth of what is being done to and with them. It's a way of getting people to do to themselves what the ETs want, but don't want to take the blame for doing. Get them to do it to themselves. Number 18, lastly, it looks like there is some uproar toward the end of next month and over the summer. I had a very, very disturbing dream about information coming out regarding Epstein, child sex trafficking, and the involvement of our government in that activity. Keep your cool as much as possible. And that's it for this look-see. So for those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's dynamic, and it changes according to what you're doing with your consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice. We take some kind of action, put something together, take it apart. It's those decisive actions that determine the path and the outcome. Of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change and get it going in some other direction. But that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction that things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way, or prepare for what looks inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that. Help things along. It's important to look ahead and assess what's happening and where are we going, so that we know whether or not we need to do something different. So thank you so much for listening. Keep your eyes open, keep your mind calm, and we'll see you in June. Have a great month.